Mr Speaker.
Brendan Burns.
Mr Speaker, it's 7 weeks since Canterbury was savaged by the February 22 earthquake. And this is the first time that I, as a Member of Parliament for Christchurch Central, have had the opportunity to speak in this House. And given that most of the fatalities, now standing at 172 formally identified, occurred within my electorate, I'd like to just acknowledge that huge human toll that occurred and the impact that that's had not just on families within our city but families across our planet, because many of those who died were visitors to Christchurch. I'd like to acknowledge the Herculean and courageous efforts of so many people, doctors and nurses, firefighters and police, the Rainbow Nation of USAR teams that gathered from around the globe to assist us at our time in need. They did outstanding work. I stood on Latimer Square watching them at work on the CTV building near some of the families who were waiting for good news to come, which in most cases did not come. I stood also and watched an Australian crew on the day after the quake as they attempted to rescue a woman from the rubble. I turned to a gentleman alongside me. I said, "Do you know who it is in there?" He said, "Yes, it is my wife." And I stood with him as that woman was rescued alive, Anne Bodkin. And I want to acknowledge also the bravery of so many ordinary people who pulled people from the rubble, who risked their own lives as aftershocks continued, who did extraordinary things and were real heroes of our times. I want to acknowledge the stoicism of the people of Christchurch. It is a well-known characteristic of us. And I want to also pay tribute to the tolerance and patience of Cantabrians through this last 7 weeks and indeed the 7 months. And I want to say that this is not actually the second earthquake, it is in fact the third, because the Boxing Day quake hit the CBD at the heart of my electorate as hard as September the 4th. And that tolerance and patience, I think, was exemplified at a public meeting I held last night in St Albans, more than 100 people attending, run with my colleague Leanne Dalzell. And although many of them were frustrated and angry about the processes and the times being taken to settle the issues, some dating back to September the 4th, they were tolerant. They weren't savaging people, and I think that that's a tribute to them. I wanted to talk about the SERA bill and just say that I hope and trust that it will deliver the same sense of urgency that we saw applied in the first few weeks as the rescue efforts continued. I think that's absolutely essential for the future of our city. It is a huge, huge task ahead, but I think there are also huge opportunities as well. I know that the Minister has concerns about how public input into the decisions that are being taken might delay what the SERA, the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority, is attempting to deliver. And I want to say that that does not need to be so. I want to acknowledge that there have been some improvements in the bill, as far as I'm concerned, from an earlier draft that we saw, and I welcome that. And I take some delight in the fact that the Minister has acknowledged the need for some changes to it. I welcome the Select Committee process. As rapid as it is, at least tomorrow, people have the opportunity to provide some input to the bill. And it's hugely important when we consider that the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority is going to dominate the life of our city for the next 5 years. And it's really important to allow that input. And acknowledge also that there is, in at least the wording of the bill, some reference to community input. In fact, it's moved from clause 66 through to line 7 in the very general policy statement at the start of the bill. And it says, the bill is founded on the need for community participation in decision-making processes while balancing this against the need for timely and coordinated recovery processes. I want to say that community input has to be allowed to happen given the scale of the disaster that we have been through and the need to do things differently this time around as we rebuild our city and rebuild it rapidly. The usual model is top-down. I say that in this instance we need to have bottom up, and people need to be allowed genuine chances for input and a rapid chance for that. And there are mechanisms there for that to happen already. CanCERN, the Canterbury Communities Earthquake Response Network, was established after the September quake. I take some pride in the fact that I chaired the first few meetings of a group of residents' associations, then stepped back. That went on to become CanCERN, which is now accepted by the Minister, by the community, by the Mayor, by the Council as a very legitimate, non-political set of groups from across the communities of Christchurch, and is sitting at tables with ministers and council and being able to be heard. It is an example of how communities can form and have a say. I note also that in the last few weeks another group sprung up that I've been involved in called Iconic, Interests in Conserving the Identity of Christchurch. That represents building owners and people with heritage interests who've had some role and input already into the civil defence provisions in terms of stopping the demolition of some heritage buildings until at least some pause can be taken and building owners can be consulted. I would point to the fact that councillors representing wards across Christchurch are in effect a consultative mechanism. Community boards also can play a much wider role if they're given the chance, if they're given the power, if they're given the mandate to be involved and to represent their communities. And the bill provides for the establishment of a community forum, but it's a forum of 20 appointed people, appointed by the Minister, with a requirement for them to meet no more than 6 times a year. I'm sorry, but that is not truly consultation. That is business as usual. That is doing it as it's always been done. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Christchurch, for Cantabrians to have their say in the reshaping of their city. They want to do that. They want to be involved. This is their life. These are their communities. These are their businesses. These are their jobs that are at stake. And they need to have more than simply a hand-picked panel. Why not, for instance, establish a community forum, allow anybody who wants to come, and allow that to decide who the community's representatives might be. Even if the Minister wants still to have veto powers or the right to appoint others to his forum, he could actually allow the community to decide who its representatives are. And really then that would be a representative body, not a panel of chosen representatives. And I say, as the MP for Christchurch Central, which encompasses all of the CBD of our city, that our business community must be very well represented on that community forum and on that panel. But it must not just be the business sector. I represent suburbs that have been hard hit twice in some instances, suburbs like Avonside and Richmond, Phillipstown, Linwood, Shirley and St Albans. They want a say in the rebuilding of their communities and their suburbs. They must be given that chance. They must be given a chance to say what sort of Christchurch they want to see. We want to see a sustainable city. We want to see a strong city. We want to see a safe city. And we want to see a city that we can all have a say in shaping its future. We must absolutely get it right. And there is a golden opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here to do that. And I exhort the Minister, even though he has taken on board some of the comments that have been made, to take the opportunities that are here in front of him now. Because if he doesn't, if you do not include communities, the price will come back on his head and on the government's head, sadly. It will be, maybe not say sadly, it will be a price too high to pay. Because you will not, if people do not feel a part of it, if they do not feel included in it, if they do not feel empowered by a process, by a decision, they will not buy into it. They won't accept the decisions, or if they do, they'll do so through gritted teeth. This is a golden, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I exhort the Minister, I exhort the government to think very seriously about inverting the usual process of top-down and allowing the communities of Christchurch to have their voice, to speak rapidly, bring them together in a community forum, and let them give some indication of who they can bring together as their representatives, and let's work together for the future of our city. Kia kaha, Christchurch.
Call Aaron